Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to Elmtec's online event for Ask the Expert, SketchUp and V-Ray edition. I hope all of you are safe and well, and I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules in order to attend this event. I hope it's going to be a really good combination of educational, inspiring, and hopefully even a bit fun. Furthermore, I really hope that the team of experts are going to be able to address your specific question and then really help elevate your personal SketchUp and V-Ray workflow. Some super quick housekeeping. I'm just going to let you know that you are all on mute. So do not worry, we can't hear you or see you, but you are able to raise your hands and you're able to use the panel to ask any questions at any time. And another point is the session is being recorded and it is going to be available on Elmtec's YouTube, so you can watch it at your leisure afterwards and refer back to it. I'm also going to do a few short introductions and also explain the structure of today's session. So my name is Lauren and I work at Elmtec. We are the exclusive distributor of SketchUp in the UK and Ireland. And we also distribute a wide range of SketchUp extensions, which allows you to get real-time support in your time zone, own language, and with access to local community events like this one. Some of you may have attended our two-part masterclass back in June, so in which case, a very warm welcome back to you. So you guys are all going to be familiar with who Ivan and Dan are. For those that didn't make the masterclass, super short intro time. So for our experts today, we have Ivan, who is a V-Ray CG specialist at Chaos Group. His expertise lies in visualized projects where his architectural knowledge and experience are crucial for performing assignments, employing a combination of his 3D skills and programming logic. And then our other expert today is Dan Stone. He's head of operations at Archilime. Dan leads a team of in-house creatives to specialise in high-end bespoke interior and exterior CGI, 3D floor plans, drone photography, fly-through and animation, lots of stuff. And there's also training for clients across the UK, Europe and Middle East. Dan's enthusiasm actually for SketchUp and V-Ray also led to the establishment of the Archilime Academy, which provides some of the most in-depth quality training in the UK. We are going to kick today's session off with both Ivan and Dan showing a few of their favourite tips and tricks and some, introducing some topics that they've get frequently questioned about. And hopefully your own questions will flow from that starting point. You may already have some ready and prepared, which is fine too. I'm going to be reading them out. And then either, either Dan or Ivan will show us the magic in real time. One final thing, we are going to do a lottery giveaway at the end of this session. So there's the opportunity to win a V-Ray license and a free seat at the Archilime Academy, so that you're really going to be able to put that V-Ray license to full use with Dan's expert training skills. So that's a really awesome prize, and hopefully you'll be able to stick around until the end to be in with a chance of winning. Elmtec will also be sending out emails after this event, and we also have a special discount arranged with one of our resellers for all the attendees. And it's including discounts on the SketchUp subscriptions, V-Ray licenses for SketchUp, and also LorbWorks, Scatter and Transmuter plugins. Those all play really nicely together in a SketchUp and V-Ray workflow. And I also know that with the V-Ray and SketchUp purchase, you'd get a free one-to-one personalized onboarding session with Nick from CADsoft Solutions. So it's a really amazing deal. But pro tip, it's a time-limited deal for 2 weeks. So make sure you check your email folders tomorrow so you don't miss out on that. Okay, now we're going to get to the fun bit. I'm going to stop talking, well, in a minute. First of all, we're going to start by finding out who's here today. Via the magic of online polls, we can make sure you're all alert and paying attention. I am joking, you don't have to answer them if you don't want to, but it is an icebreaker before Ivan and Dan start. So let's see. And also a full disclosure, never done polls before. This might not work. Let's see. Let's see what happens. Okay. So I think I can see you're all answering that, which is great because I can't see it on my screen, which is panicking me, but I think you can see that, which is great. So yeah, what's your industry background? Okay, cool. Well, we've got a choice here of architect, so commercial interiors or interior designers, construction, film, TV, CGI artists, or landscape architecture. And I can tell you that our biggest audience here today are in the commercial interiors or interior design sector. That's 34% of you are in that sector. 31% of attendees are in architect sector. And then we've got 16% are working in film, TV, CGI artists. And 9% are working in construction. And 9% are working in landscape architecture. Okay, I'm very relieved that worked. Let's try another one. Okay. Oh dear. Okay. The next question we've got, where are you joining us from today? I only have 5 options there, so I do apologise. I do realise that there are more places than 5 places in the world, but that was all that was available. Oh, okay. Very interesting. Results are coming in. Okay, so I think we have got a clear definitive answer. 71% of you are joining us from the UK or Ireland. 9% of you are in the rest of Europe, and then 9% of you are in North America. 3% of you are in Africa or Asia. And then I don't know how true this is, but 9% of you have listed that you are on your own private tropical island. Very interesting. So yeah, tell us where. Great. Let's go to the next question. Really glad you guys are seeing these questions because I can't see them. Okay, next poll question is, what is your SketchUp proficiency? We've got 3 options here, everyone. We have got beginner, we have got intermediate, and we've got not to brag, but I'm a power user. Answer carefully, everyone. Okay, I think we've got some answers. 20% have listed their SketchUp proficiency as beginner. 51% have gone for the safe ground and said that they're intermediate. And then 29% have said, not to brag, but I'm a power user. Ivan and Dan, get scared. We've got experts on. Okay. Let us go. This is the last one. I hope you're enjoying this. It's kind of fun, but we miss doing real life events. I don't know if you can tell. Okay, last poll. What's your experience level with V-Ray? Got 3 options once again here. We have got the beginner ones, dipped my little toe in the water. We've got the intermediate ones who are like, I'm a solid swimmer. And then we've got the experts, the power users, the deep sea divers. So let's give it a few seconds. Let's see what we get. Okay. Okay, Dan and Ivan, I think you might be safe. We've got 3% who say that they're deep sea diver experts, so the very highest level in V-Ray. And then we've got 29% who say that they're intermediate, they're solid swimmers. in V-Ray. And then the largest proportion here, we've got beginners of V-Ray. So we've got 68% of the audience saying that they dip their little toe in the water of V-Rays. So, okay, that's very interesting. Thank you so much for filling out those polls, guys. That's really, really helpful, and hopefully gears you up to asking some questions. So I am now going to switch my screen, and I'm going to hand over to Dan from Archilime. He is going to show us, I think, one of his most asked questions, and then we'll also flip to Ivan, and you can start asking questions whenever you're ready into the panel box, and we'll take it from there.
Thanks for that, Lauren, and yeah, it's great to be back again for this Q&A session. And obviously, as today is all about questions and answers, I had a think about one of the big questions that I'm asked when I'm running courses with the Archilime Academy, and it's definitely from an interior design perspective. It's how to realistically create fabrics within V-Ray. So obviously, there are two ways to go about answering this question. The first is how we go about generating a realistic looking 3D model of said fabric, and also how we go about working on the materiality, just to ensure that the texture looks as good as it could within V-Ray. So what I've been using here is a plugin called Clothworks to generate the form of some simple curtains. So this plugin is awesome. It allows you to drape basically surfaces over solid objects, and works really, really well for soft fabrics. So initially what I'm doing is I'm just setting up the parameters so that our curtains undergo a simulation within our model space. Initially, what I do is I use the sandbox tools to generate a grid with quite a small grid spacing, so that I roughly cover the window here to act as our almost our piece of fabric that we're going to use to cover the curtain. Then all I'm doing is adding some pins to the curtain to stop it falling to the floor when I begin to run Clothworks. And then what you've just seen there is myself just creating a curtain texture, and then, as we can see here, just making sure it's applied properly to the curtain. So I appreciate the video is moving by quite quickly, but I really wanted to choose which objects I wanted the curtain to interact with. So things like the floor, the walls, and the windowsill, I need the curtain to just kind of rest on them. So this explains the balling up we see on the floor there. So as you can see, as soon as I press the play button, the curtain starts to fall, and I can then go ahead and manipulate the curtain by selecting the pins at the top, and then using the arrows, I can draw the curtains. So this is a really, really powerful piece of software. It's a physics-based extension, which basically allows you to control parameters such as wind, gravity, density, and thickness on any piece of cloth that you want to try and model within SketchUp. So as you can see here, I'm just navigating the model, just trying to get it just right. And you can see how the rest of the curtain reacts to the pins that I'm manipulating. Oops, so I seem to get a little bit lost inside the wall here, which I'm sure has happened to you at some point. I'm just panning out, and we can clearly see that that Clothworks has done the job. This is pretty much what we're going to go with now in terms of form for our curtain. So something else you could do, which I'm just about to do here, is you could just click and drag and manipulate manually points of the cloth. See how I'm just pulling out the base there? It's really, really intuitive and really straightforward to use. Personally, one of the best things about this plugin for me is that once you've finished using it, it automatically rewraps the texture to the piece of cloth. So what I'm doing here is I'm now swapping out the initial V-Ray texture that I had on the curtain with a two-sided version, which I created right at the beginning. So I've used through paint to just swap those materials over like for like, so that now if we've set up the two-sided material correctly, it should allow some light through. Now I'm just fiddling around, just making sure the form of the curtain rail is right, before then beginning to take a look at test renders. So here I'm just taking a look at the reflection glossiness and just dropping that slightly, because we don't really get very defined glossy reflections from fabric, obviously. So this is what we're testing here. We're testing the translucency first and foremost by region rendering just a portion of the image. So you can see how I'm adjusting the translucency slider, and what this does is it allows either more or less light to pass through the curtain. And then once happy, what I'm doing is I'm just letting it render. I think I went to make a cup of tea at this point. And then when I came back, obviously I could see that it was a good result. The two-sided material worked really, really well. And I can now almost tick this off and move on to the next topic, which I want to focus on, which is adding fibers to bits of geometry. So we use something called V-Ray fur. And what I'm doing here is I'm applying it to the throw. And as you can see in the geometry tab of the asset editor, there are lots and lots of different variables which you can adjust. And whilst testing in real time, it actually ends up being quite a nice smooth process, watching the effects of the changes that you're making in the asset editor. So again, I'm using region render to do this. This really is one of those things that you'd like to test in small doses, as it were. Just as an example, you can see how long it takes to render when I'm rendering the entire image, as it were. So after adjusting the form, I'm pretty much happy with it by this point. I can now start taking a look at the materiality. So what I'm doing here is creating a fall off texture within the diffuse. As you can see, that's updated in real time. So after lowering the reflection glossiness value, I'm then pretty much ready for a final render. So these are a few tips from me, just in terms of how we go about creating realistic looking textures. So we covered the form of curtains. We also, off this recording, I draped the throw over the sofa using the same technique, but without pins. I draped this cloth over the sofa. So you can use Clothworks for many different types of soft fabrics. I then decided to add a two-sided material to the curtains to allow light to pass through, and then added V-Ray and did some real-time testing with that, just to polish off with the throw at the end. So I'm hoping this has helped in one way or another, and I hope you've all got questions with regards to how I went and did that. So I'd now like to hand back over to Lauren.
Thanks, Dan. That was awesome. Really good way to kick off the session. There is actually already had some questions before you began, which was fantastic. We've got one here. Ignacio, he's asking the name of the plugin. It's called Clothworks. I believe it's a sketchification plugin. I'd have to check that, but yeah, the plugin that Dan's talking about is Clothworks. It's super useful. Question from Luke for Dan here: does Clothworks use a lot of computer power? Is it slow, and can it gum up your model? Dan, let me know if you need me to go back onto your screen to answer that.
No, that's okay. It's definitely one of those ones that it takes a little bit more out of your machine. There's no getting past that. There are ways of optimizing it though. You may have seen when I turned on my hidden geometry of my curtain, the size of each of my polygons, they were actually quite large. you can actually make them bigger, so you have less polygons, and then you could drape. You're basically draping less polygons, which means it's a little bit kinder on your machine. So there are definitely ways around, you know, draping really high fidelity, high polygon count grids, essentially. So yeah, I mean, that would be my response to that, Luke.
Okay, cool. I hope that answered the question for you, Luke. I don't know if you'll know this one, Dan. Christian, hi Christian, he's asking how much does it cost? I don't actually know off the top of my head. I don't suppose you know, do you, Dan?
Not off the top of my head, no, but I can find out.
Okay, yeah. Christian, hold fire. We'll get back to you on that. Don't think it's too extortionate, but we'll double check for you. We've got another question which came straight at the beginning from Katerina. She was asking, how do you create a water effect reflection on a surface? I'm trying to show a water-lit reflection on a round surface. Ivan, perhaps you want to take that question?
Hello everyone. I just want to be sure what kind of surface you're talking about. What kind of reflections? Water reflections,
yeah.
or
yeah,
water.
So Katerina, hi Katerina, she's basically asking, how do you create water effect reflection?
Water effect.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I'm gonna switch your screen, Ivan, so that we can all see your screen. 1 second.
Okay.
Thanks, Katerina. Great question.
I think you can see my screen right now. So first I'm going to isolate that. And after that, I'm going to create something like pool. Okay.
Ivan, Katharina has actually said that it's actually a water reflection on a car, to be precise. Don't know if that makes sense. On a car, yes. And for everyone else in the chat, Nick has kindly provided an answer for how much Clothworks is. It's $29.
Well, about the reflections, I will create a simple material right now. It's not important the surface right now. It's important the way that we can create the reflections. So first I'm going to apply that material right here. And from here, the reflections, I will increase the reflections to absolutely white color. And after that, I'm going to change the reflection glossiness to something like 0.99, but that's not the most important right here because you can just leave it to 1. And after that, I'm going to activate the reflection IOR, and I will decrease it to something like 0.33. And now we can have the reflections. That is the normal reflection of water. So it's not important what is the surface you're applying the material. The most important right here will be to create the realistic reflections. And if you want to have some bump right here, like a water, you can just add right here a bump texture. It can be noise, for example. And probably we should increase it and change the size. Maybe we can decrease the bump to something like 0.1 or 0.2. And that is the case if we want to have some waves. But if we don't want the waves, if we just want the reflections, we can just disable the bump from here. And that is the case if we want to create reflections. Is that answer the question?
Yeah, I think that was well explained. Katerina, let us know if that's helped. If you need any more information, we're happy to provide that. Ivan, I've got another question we can perhaps add on to this while you're still on screen. Question here from Nick. Hi, Nick. He's asking if you're building a workstation for V-Ray, would you recommend AMD 3950X or Intel 10900K? I don't know if I said those words right.
Well, it's really difficult for me to recommend the hardware, but I think that both of them will work well for you. Personally, it's a personal opinion. I prefer Intel, but it's up to you.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Ivan. Great. Okay, I think we've got a couple of questions. Hopefully that answered Katerina's question. Oh, Nick's saying that's a cop out. Oh dear, Ivan. But we're going to move on to Dan. I'm going to switch back to Dan's screen because we've got a few more questions about Clothworks actually. Right.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
I'm going to make Dan the presenter. Okay, so back with Dan and with the Clothworks. We've got a question here from Richard. Hi, Richard. Hi, Dan. What is the reason you used a sandbox to create the terrain? To create the curtain rather than a Clothworks grid?
There isn't one really. It's just that I'm used to using the sandbox tools to do so a little bit more than I am the Clothworks tool, to tell you the truth. So there's absolutely no difference with regards to the quality that you would get. It's you end up with the same end result as you'd expect, really.
Okay, that's fine. Another question here, which also regarding curtains, is coming from Beth. Hi, Beth. She's asking, possible to turn a draped curtain, for example, into a proxy component?
Yeah, good question. So this is the type of thing that you have to start doing when you're using lots and lots of different 3D models within your scene. So if I turn on my hidden geometry, you can see the complexity of the curtain is nowhere near as great as the complexity of the throw here, for argument's sake. Looking at the sofa, we can see that this at the moment doesn't really look like a sofa. So in answer to your question, Beth, this is a good example of when we would use a proxy. So I've already converted this sofa to a proxy. There are times where if I was going to be taking a shot from very close to the curtain, I may want to increase the quality of the curtain. So therefore it may be worth me basically increasing the number of polygons in the curtain, and therefore the idea of proxying it is actually quite a good one. So to do that, I'll run through the process. So very, very simply, you can just select the curtain, and then what we're doing is just going to export to proxy. And as you can see in the bottom there, it's just loading up the V-Ray window. And what it's going to ask us to do is basically define where the VR mesh is going to go. So the VR mesh is essentially, I mean, I'm sure Ivan could explain this much better than I can. It's almost like the prompt that tells V-Ray what the proxy should actually look like once it's rendered. I mean, Ivan, I'm sure you'd want to add a little bit more onto the end of that after I finished explaining. But what we do here is we'll pick a point. Hit save, and then what we could do is just press export, and it's going to export a proxy of the curtain with 1000 polygons. So this will now show up within our asset editor in the geometry tab. As you can see, it says curtains here. And what we'd need to make sure is if you're ever sending files over to somebody else or to a different machine, is to make sure that your file directories don't end up with almost like a warning triangle, because that means that V-Ray would then not be able to read that prompt as to what the proxy should actually look like once rendered. I mean, Ivan, is there anything else that you'd add to that explanation there?
Yes, I can explain the proxies and the way they're working. Basically, if we have a real, I'm sorry?
I'll make you a presenter, Ivan.
Okay. Are you finished? Okay. So basically, if we have a really heavy geometry, right here, my geometries are already exported to proxies. But if we have a really heavy geometry, it's a good idea to use the proxies. We can export them just from here. Basically, the proxy is a dynamic V-Ray geometry, which is exported to your hard drive. So if I export that geometry right here, right now, okay, that geometry is not presented in the project anymore. Basically, that thing right here is just a placeholder or a preview of the actual geometry, which will be saved on our hard drive. And if I, for example, let's select it again. If we can see right here, we can choose between proxy mesh or proxy scene. With the proxy scene, we can export the object with the materials. With the proxy mesh, we can export V-Ray proxy. The difference is that the proxy scene will be capsulated. So you will not be able after that to change materials or something like that. It will be absolutely capsulated, which can be really useful in some cases because you can load the painting, for example, into another scene and all the materials will be right there. And the big advantage of that is that you can actually import that into any other platforms. So this is a huge advantage because V-Ray is something like in V-Ray you can use a lot of assets into different platforms and switch between one of them to another. So basically with the proxy scene you can export it as a capsulated file which can be rendered on all the V-Ray platforms. With the proxy mesh you can change the materials after that. Another thing that I want to show you right here is that we can have different preview types depending on how we want to export the image, and after that how we want to see the preview. And we have faces in preview, which will define how much faces we will have in the preview in the file, which will be just a preview. So if I click right here right now, you can see that we have just a preview. Now the actual geometry is saved on our hard drive and we just have a placeholder right here which will indicate the size and the position of the geometry. So if we take a closer look right here, we can see that we have different proxy preview types. We can show the whole mesh, but usually it's not a good idea because if we want to export a really heavy geometry, we don't want to preserve the same amount of polys into the project. So it's not a good idea to use the whole mesh, but we can change it to bounding box. For example, the chairs right here. And as you can see, when they're proxies, we have materials which we can change. Okay, let's see again the painting. Here are the materials of the painting which are saved and we can change them. While with the proxy scene, everything will be capsulated. And for the proxy preview, we can have a point preview, which will be really wide option and it will not be heavy actually. So if you want to save memory, and if you have, for example, I'm always giving that example because it's really good. If you have a forest with thousands of trees, you cannot save that geometry into your file because you will not be able to work with that file anymore. So for that purpose, we're exporting the tree to our hard drive. And here we can end up just with a representation of the image. It's like a placeholder with different preview types. So right here, we just have preview types, but when we click the render button, V-Ray will grab that geometry from our hard drive and it will render everything properly. So basically, that is the concept behind the V-Ray proxies.
Perfect. Thank you, Ivan.
You're welcome.
I hope that answered the question. I just have a quick question I missed from the beginning from Jonathan Clayton. Sorry about that. It's a super quick one. Is V-Ray a GPU renderer?
Well, thank you for that question. It's a really nice question. Usually with the render engines, we have render engines which are based on our GPU, our graphic card, or they're based on our CPU, the central processing unit. But with V-Ray, actually, we can have with one render engine, basically two different render engines. The first one is based on the central processing unit, and the second one is based on our graphic card, which is cool. Right now, we have separation, CUDA and RTX, because we have a new generation of graphic cards, and they're using the RTX technology, which is meant for ray tracing, for rendering in general. So with that graphic card, we can have real improvement in the rendering speed. And now the CPU is right here, and the next options are for the graphic card. So if you have an RTX graphic card, you can just select right here and you can use it. Or if you don't have an RTX graphic card, you can just select the CUDA, which is the GPU in general. And from here, you can choose your graphic cards. And the good thing right here is that you can actually combine your CPU with your GPU. In general, you have to select the GPU, and after that, from the drop-down menu right here, you can select all the devices you want. It's a good idea to keep in mind that with the GPU rendering, we can support the GPU rendering with the CPU, but it works only with the GPU. So if you are on the CPU, you cannot combine the CPU with the GPU. You have to be on the GPU. And with the GPU, you can choose which hardware devices you want to use for the rendering process. So basically, you can have a hybrid rendering and select the CPU and the GPU and use them both, which is really nice because you can utilize your hardware and all of your components on your machine and take advantage of them and render faster.
Okay, great. Yeah, we're getting a few questions regarding kind of hardware rendering. So I'm just going to stick on this topic with you, Ivan, for a little bit before we switch back to Dan, if that's okay. Another question just on this to tie in from Luke. He says that he's got an oldish computer and he's got the graphic card, the NVIDIA GeForce GTX 780M 4 gigabytes. Do you think, Ivan, that that's too old to get good results in V-Ray?
Well, it depends on the projects you are doing. So you can just try to render the same scene with the CPU and after that with the GPU and see what is the difference. What is the difference in the render time? You can save your renders in the history. So, okay, I have to render something. So basically you can try both of them and save them and see what is the time that it will require for the rendering. So you can decide, do you want to use the CPU or the GPU? And for the GPU, you can just decide, you can just check the rendering time, because of course, if you have a better graphic card or newer central processing unit, probably you render faster. It's not probably, actually, you will render faster if you're using that hardware. So it depends. If you're satisfied with the speed, you can just use it. But if you want to buy a new card, probably it will be good because you render faster.
Okay, yeah,
So you
that
can save your renders. Okay, I'll have to just add some folder right here. And after that, you can switch to CPU and re-render and make a comparison in the rendering time. Warren?
Yeah, sorry. I was just going to type into the chat for everyone, but Elmtec also we also sell graphic cards as well. So if you need advice on particular graphic cards, feel free to get in contact with that as well about which ones are going to work best with SketchUp and V-Ray. We're more than happy to answer any questions on that as well. Obviously, using SketchUp and V-Ray, the hardware is also an important issue. One more for you, Ivan. We're on the same topic, and then we'll switch back to Dan. This is coming from Richard. He's saying, "Hi, Ivan. I'm really struggling with CUDA RTX rendering on complex models that refuses to complete the render. I have an RTX 2080 Ti, but I'm not getting the benefit of the speed. Is this a common problem?"
First, hi, Richard. And the second thing, the RTX usually works faster, but not in each scene. It should be set right here. If you have a really complex scene, you can take advantage of the RTX, but if the scene is really simple, probably you will not see huge difference. And if the problem is persisting, probably it's a good idea to send a mail to our support team, and they can check the project and why it's not working. But in the most cases, in order to see the huge improvement, you need to have a really heavy project with a lot of geometry, textures, and etc. Another advantage of the RTX graphic card that you can use is that you can export a VR scene from the drop-down menu right here. And after that, you can use Lavina. Have you heard about Lavina? Probably that's a good poll. But okay, I will just share a few words about Lavina. With Lavina, you can drag and drop your scene and render in real time. For that purpose, you need the RTX graphic card. So you can sign for the beta if you have that graphic card. And after that, you can use it, and it will be really useful for you, I guess. Because if you use Lavina, you can have a real-time experience with the new technology. I think that I can show you video because on that machine I don't have an RTX graphic card. Basically, you just need to export a VR scene and after that to drag and drop it into Lavina. And you can stroll around, walk into the project, and explore the project from different angles. Everything will be in real time. So it is a really good and useful project because, okay, here you can see that. Because with Lavina, you can combine the power of the ray tracing render engines and the real-time experience, which is great. So if you have that graphic card, you can just sign for the beta.
Thanks, Ivan.
You're welcome.
I am gonna put this to either Dan or Ivan, whoever wants to answer this one. It's Rindy, I think. Hi, Rindy. Hello, what is the best way to create some imperfections like dust or fingerprints on glass to make it look more realistic in a scene? Who wants to take that, Dan or Ivan?
I don't mind answering that one.
Okay, I'm going to just switch Dan to present. 1 second. Thanks, Rindy. That's a really good question.
Yeah, really nice question there. I think this is something which I am asked a lot actually, and it's all to do with something called alpha masks, which you may have heard of before. They're essentially just black and white images which you can use to control how visible a certain effect is. They're used quite a lot in post-production in Photoshop, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to simulate a texture here which has say scratches on the surface. So initially what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make it black for the time being and increase my reflection color so that it's as intense as it can be. And then in the reflection glossiness, I'm going to add a bitmap that has essentially I'm now going to source an alpha mask. Let's go with this one here. So as you can see, there's quite a lot of imperfections here. What we could do is we can better control this if we right click on the bitmap, which is in the reflection glossiness slot. And if we wrap that in a color correction, what we could do is tweak the brightness and the contrast so that you end up with the effect that you're after. So this works as well if you were to take off the Fresnel, and if I just drop the intensity there, you can end up with a nice metallic sort of scratched surface as well. So I'd really recommend people use alpha masks in the reflection glossiness bitmap slot to be able to get those surface imperfections. Now, what you could always do is, I'm just going to convert that one back to what it was before. You can always copy this and take it down into the bump and add it as a bump map. So I'm going to right click and paste as a copy. Now here, what I like to do is just whilst I'm testing within the asset editor, I'll go up and I'll untick the checkbox next to the bitmap in the reflection glossiness so that I'm getting really pure glossy reflections, because this then allows me to tweak the bump and I can just really see just the effect of the relief that I'm trying to give this, so that when you go back and turn on your reflection glossiness, it should look a little bit more realistic. We're not editing this bump map here, say, where we're not seeing too much difference. We're getting much more of a pronounced effect if we were to turn off our reflection glossiness imperfection mask and then start tweaking the bump map down here. So that would be the approach that I take, and personally I feel like every texture you create should have some form of a generated imperfection mask applied to it. So, but yeah, really nice question. Lauren, I'll hand back over to you now.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Thanks, Rindy. Yeah, really good question. I hope that has answered that one. I just want to actually go back to Ivan quickly. We probably don't need to see Ivan's screen, but just following on from the last little bit that you did there was a question from Ray. Hi, Ray. He was wondering, could you use Lavina with a VR headset? Ivan, I'll let you go on that one.
Okay, for now, it's not possible, but we're thinking about that. As I mentioned, Project Lavina is still a beta version, so it's too early for things like the VR glasses, but we're considering that.
Okay, cool, great. That was a nice quick question. We're still on Dan's screen, so let's see if Dan wants to take this question. This is coming from Keith. Hi, Keith. He
Hi,
is
Keith.
asking any tips for creating presentation of interior spaces with a bird's eye view. Dan, if you want to take that, or Ivan take that, up to you.
Yeah, I could take this one.
Right.
Initially,
Yeah, so,
what I would, sorry, go on, Lauren.
No, sorry, I thought you were asking to read the question again, but you are actually starting to speak. My apologies.
I'm good. Yeah, it's a good question. I think initially the approach would be to generate the 3D model as get it as advanced as it can possibly be. So you can see I've got an interior space here. The focus really is on, if I activate this section plane, the focus really is in this direction. So I'm not really, considering anything that's behind the camera. Obviously, if you're generating an entire design, you should go ahead and obviously generate the entire design within SketchUp and V-Ray. But you may notice here how I've added a section plane. So what we could do if we wanted to was render a view like this, in the same way that we could add another section plane from the top, which would be more of a bird's eye view. So I can then align my view to this, and you could choose if you wanted to have this as a perspective type shot or in parallel projection, which obviously is historically more of the plan view type of angle that I imagine you're talking about. And with this, what you could do is open up V-Ray, and in your geometries section of the asset editor, you can go through and take a look at the options. So with this section cut here, you can choose whether your section plane, i.e. the one that allows you to look in to this interior space, you can choose whether it affects the light, whether it clips light geometry, or whether it only affects the camera rays. So what we're looking for is actually just the camera rays. So we want any of the light that's being emitted into this space to kind of stay within that space. All we want to do is almost have a peak over the top. We don't want to allow light into the now really large void, the really large skylight which we've now got. So what we'll do then is we could just start running a test render. So we'll see how quickly this loads. Normally when we're at the office, we've got a V-Ray swarm, which is where you can link up lots of different machines together to render faster and use their computing power. But in this case here, it's rendered fairly quickly. And this is essentially what you're asking, isn't it? Does that answer the question, do you think, Lauren?
I think it did, yeah. I think, yeah, that question was from Keith. So yeah, I think that just about did it, but let us know, Keith, in the comments if you need a bit more. Yeah.
If you'd like to go over this in detail.
Yeah, I'll stay with you, Dan, for a second, because I'm just going to pick up quickly on something so just to let you know, Keith says yes, thank you very much. So basically, the previous question we had before, I'll go back to you on that because it's regarding the alpha masks. So it's Beth. She's asking, where would you recommend finding good quality alpha masks, Dan?
Okay, so there's a few different, thanks for the question, Beth. There's a few sources that we use, which users of V-Ray may have heard in the past. There's one called Polygon, POLIIGON.com. That's a really nice one. They've got lots and lots of different textures, and they've got all of the different passes that you'd need to create your own. I know they do HDRIs or dome lights as well. And I do believe they've got some alpha masks there as well. So I'd definitely check out Polygon. The one that I used, I believe, was from the Grant Warwick collection. Yeah, so Grant Warwick, give him a Google, is a really prominent artist, and his masks are incredible. I mean, just looking at this one particular texture pack, we've got lots of different types of masks, which naturally could be used for lots of different things as well. So not just within V-Ray, but we'd also use these within Photoshop as well.
Perfect. Okay. I hope that answered the question, Beth, regarding the alpha masks. I missed a question earlier on. Apologise. Quite a lot of questions coming in, so I'll try and get through as many as we can, guys. And if we don't get to your particular question, do feel free to email, and we'll try and direct you to Ivan and Dan, and they can hopefully help. Let me see, it was quite early on. Okay, yeah, so this was a question from Jamie. Hi, Jamie. He asked, should we render the product in V-Ray before adding it to the model, or work on each product within the SketchUp model? Ivan, I am gonna switch to you for this one, if that's okay. I'll make you the presenter. And let me know if you want me to read out the question again, Ivan.
Yes, I think that you should read it again, because I'm not sure that.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, Jamie is asking, should we render the product in V-Ray before adding it to the model, or should we work on each product within the SketchUp model? So I think he's asking, and maybe if you want to type in Jamie clarification.
Yeah, it's a good.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I understand the question, because usually we're doing the model, and in the project actually we're doing the models, and I'm not sure that I understand that workflow actually.
Okay, no worries. Jamie, if you want to write back in the comments again and maybe phrase it so we understand a bit more, or afterwards we can work it out. Let's go to another question. This is from Domenico. Hi there. And it's more of a general question. Do you reduce the lifespan of a machine, CPU, GPU, etc., when using a rendering software?
Well, I don't think so, but I'm not a hardware specialist, so it's really difficult to answer answer for questions like that one. But I don't think so, because it's a hardware, and probably everything will reduce the lifespan of hardware. But
this is true. Yeah, it's a hard question, and questions, obviously hardware, it's quite important as well with SketchUp and V-Ray and these hardware and graphic cards. I wrote it in the chat earlier, but just to let you know that not only do we distribute SketchUp and V-Ray, we also have a dedicated hardware department who can help with these questions. For AMD, PMY, we've got a range of graphic cards and a really excellent team. You can drop me an email and I can field it to the team at any time. Just wanted to interject there with the hardware questions. Thanks, Ivan. Let's go to another question. This is from Mia. Hi, Mia. She's asking, could you demonstrate how to create a shine or matte pattern velvet fabric from scratch? Many thanks.
Okay. So first I'm going to create material from here, and I'm going to make it two-sided material for now. And as you can see, it will require some materials which will be loaded. But now, in the latest update, actually we can do something else. We can create generic material, and that is something really nice that I want to show you. Okay. And from here, we can add translucency. That is a new layer structure for the materials, which is really nice because it will allows us to modify a general material. And with that layer structure, we don't have to create two-sided materials and load materials in it. we can just click right here and we can have the translucency. And this can make the material really nice. So for the velvet, we will need to have reflection. Probably I will make it more reflective, but the difference right here is that we should decrease the reflection glossiness a lot. Okay, maybe we can switch to fabric. And we can increase even more right here. So now if we change to something like red, and after that, just okay, we can decrease the translucency slightly because it will not be so translucent. And maybe we can increase even more. So we should tweak the reflection glossiness and the reflections until we find the right amount for the balance between the reflection core and the reflection glossiness.
Okay.
And after that, if we are satisfied with the result, we can just add a bump texture, which will be something like silver or noise or something like that, but we should be very careful with that. So basically, that is a general fabric material, which is more shiny, and for that reason we are decreasing the reflection glossiness. And if we want to have some bump, we can always add the bump.
Something else which we do as well, which we find works really well for velvet, is if you tick the reflection IOR, and then if you increase that to something like 2.5 or 3.
Yes, we can always use the reflection IOR, but we should be careful with the reflection IOR because it's a physically based. It's something physically based, so we can always increase it. And when we increase the IOR, we are going to make everything more, let's say, fake. It will not be physically accurate, but after all, the visualizations are an art, and we can do that if we want. We just need to be careful with the reflection glossiness and the reflection cores. And the good thing, as I mentioned, is that if you open the material library and drag and drop some material from here, and I think that we have a lot of velvets right here in the end. We have silk. Okay. You can explore the material from here. So we have the reflection, as you can see, and the core right here is absolutely it's close to the diffuse core, which is fine. It's not necessary, but you can do it. You can use different cores for the reflection. And again, the reflection glossiness is decreased. For that material, we are increasing the IOR again. So if you wonder how to create some material, you can always just drag and drop some of the materials from the library and check them and explore their properties.
That's on our academy courses, especially our access into V-Ray course. This is the tip that I give people at the end of the first day. Just try and deconstruct some of these preset textures because they've got some really, really nice ones there. And for me anyway, that's the way that I like to learn the best, just by pulling things apart and prodding them until they work. So I'd definitely recommend, seconded what Ivan says there, and just take the preset materials and then just see how they're constructed.
I want to add something else for the translucency. If it's a really thin material, you can increase the translucency slightly, but if you have some thickness of the material, for example, thickness of the fabric, you can decrease it a lot, because probably if it's a thick material, you will not let the white go through the texture. So it's up to you. You can increase it or decrease it. Another thing that I can show you right here regarding the reflection is that you can change the core of the reflections, which can give you additional interesting effect. So you can change it from here. You can create close core to the diffuse core. Usually I'm not doing that, but if you want, you can do it. You can increase the reflection even more. The reflection glossiness, I'm sorry. And if you want, you can even use a reflection core, which is a black-white texture. And it will make some really nice texture right here on the fabric. Or you can make something else with the layers structure. Let's say we can overwrite. We can add different layers right here, which can be really helpful. It's not just the translucency. And if you want, as I mentioned, we can add some flowers right here on the reflection core if you want to have some diversity, or you can add something totally different. And something that I'm always using is the diffuse core. I will add another texture in the diffuse core. It's the fell texture. So basically, the fell texture is really nice when it comes to fabric materials. And I'm always using that texture. It's specifically designed for things like that, fabrics, for example. And we can tweak those parameters right here. Maybe we can make it. And we can achieve totally different and interesting result. We can swap them, make that whiter. And as you can see, again, we have totally different cores. I will make that white again. But if you want, you can do it just green core. You can make a lot of experiments and tweak the material until you are satisfied. We can also change that to Fresnel or distance blend on towards. These are different options because basically that material will, that texture, because it's a texture in the diffuse, will make probably, if I found, let's say, generic. As you can see, we have one core on the surface which is perpendicular to us and another core on the surface which is going to be something like parallel to us. So we have two different cores, and here we can see the core which is perpendicular, and it will be mixed with the core which is parallel to the viewer or to the camera. And here we have the cores which are usually they're close one to another. And from here, we can choose what kind of preview we want, depending on the material we're tweaking. Right now, we are doing a fabric material, so we can just select the fabric material. And if we want, we can again just add the material, right, the reflection core right here, and make it just maybe whiter. And if we don't want the translucency, we can just remove it. So it's up to you to tweak the materials right here or the colors until you are satisfied with the result.
Okay, thank you, Ivan, and Dan as well there for going into detail for that one. That's hopefully that's answered the question. I'm going to switch to Dan now for the next screen. 1 second, because we have a question here from Ignacio. It was right at the beginning and I missed it, so my apologies, Ignacio. Can we create a rain weather effect in V-Ray, not by Photoshop?
Rain weather effect. So in answer to that question, I guess we've got to think about what the conditions of the environment would be. So we've got the potential to have rainwater on some of these windows. So we could actually use a similar type of process that we used for the surface imperfection texture that I was working on before. We could create a new glass texture, or alternatively, as Ivan says, just bring in one of the glass textures from the preset library. And what we could do there is, again, in the reflection glossiness, if we were to add a bitmap, we could then find I'm going to have to try and source a water droplets mask. I don't have one to hand, so I'm just going to demonstrate with fingerprints instead. So what we could, I mean, this is difficult because we can't see this with actual water droplets, but you can kind of imagine this as we're still seeing through the glass texture, but we're actually seeing imperfections on the surface. So in terms of creating an environment or creating a texture which simulates a rainy environment, this would definitely be the approach that I would take. You would then just go ahead and paint this straight onto your glass.
Okay, hope that has helped. Let us know. It's quite difficult sometimes to find out if it's answered the question with in this format. But yeah, just let us know. Let's just cautious. We're nearing the end of our session. We've got 15 more minutes, so let's try and get through a couple more questions because we still have to do our lottery draw, which is rather exciting. So we're going back again to Rindy. He's asking, would you again please explain how the two-sided material works? For example, the front and back side of a leaf material for realistic trees. Ivan, shall I put you back on that one, or Dan, do you want to take that?
I think I'll pass it over to Ivan because he's using the newest version. So Ivan, I'll just make you there.
Yeah, I'll make Ivan the presenter.
Okay, so we have a material proxy right here, and we have the leaf. So first, I'm going to explore the material. We have a front material, which is the leaf, and we don't have right now a back material. And if we don't have that material, V-Ray will grab the front material and it will use it for the back material as well. But if we want to have different materials on the front side of the leaf and different material on the back side, probably we will have to use another material here, which will be darker. But in that case, I'm using the same material for the front part of the leaf and for the back side. So basically, the two-sided materials requires these two materials right here, front material and back material. And the thing that we can see right here is the translucency slider, so we can manipulate the translucency of the material, because when we have some objects which are with relatively really small thickness, for example, sheet paper, or a leaf or something like that, we can notice that the light is going through the surface and it will go through the surface and it will not be absorbed totally. So it will be transparent, in other words. And here we can control that from the slider. But now we have, as I mentioned, a really nice way to create that effect faster. Before that, I want to show you right here the material of the leaf. So first, we have a texture, a green texture, which is wrapped into color correction. That is the color correction. Here is the source. So I'm just increasing the contrast and the brightness of that leaf with the color correction. And if I click the arrow right here, I'm going back to the material, and we can see that we have, usually, we can add opacity. In that case, I don't have opacity, but the opacity can create, let me see if I have a leaf with opacity. Mhm. Okay, I'll switch to another scene. Okay, here we can see the opacity. So the opacity is the texture which will define which part is translucent, absolutely transparent, and which part is not. So as you can see right here, we have the the opacity texture, and that is the result of the opacity texture. So it's a really nice way if the leaves are just a plane to make the leaf shape of the leaf on that plane. Just need to add the opacity texture. And now the new thing, if I create a new material, that is the easiest way. Let's rename it to something like leaf. From here, we can use a texture. So let's find the texture. Okay, I think that green texture right here is fine. I can also right click on the diffuse texture, which will define the core and the appearance of the core. And I can wrap that with a right click right here, wrap, and I can wrap it into core correction, and I can just make the contrast more noticeable, let's say, increase the contrast. And after that, I'm going to the opacity slot. Again, I will choose a texture. And let's see, do I have a texture? Maybe not in that folder. Okay, and here we can see some opacity texture. And now, as you can see, the black core is cutting everything, and we can see only the white part of the texture. Okay, here is the texture, and that is what the opacity is doing. I can switch to something different just to see the leaf. Okay, I'm going back to agenda. And now for the translucency, we don't need to create again two-sided material where we have to find material for the back side of the leaf and material for the front side. We just need to click right here and then add the translucency. It's a really easy approach and I really like it. So if I decrease it, it will not be translucent. And if I increase it, it will be really translucent. It's look like it's a black core, but actually it's not, usually. Good idea is to keep the translucency to something like gray core, middle gray core for the leaves. And if we want, we can also add texture for the bump. Okay. I'm not sure that I have texture for the bump for that particular leaf, but I can actually copy that from here. Clear that slot, paste as a copy. And after that, we can see that we're pasting the leaf with the core correction, and we can decrease the saturation, and we can even increase the contrast more. And now we can have a slight bump right here, and we can decrease it to something really small. And that is the leaf material. Basically, with the opacity map, we can cut the geometry with a black and white texture. And after that, from the drop-down menu with the layers right here, we can just add the translucency. Of course, if we want to have different materials for the front side of the of the leaf and different material on the backside, we will need to use the traditional two-sided material. But in the most cases, I don't think it's necessary. Probably if you want to render something from a really small distance, some detail of the tree or something like that, maybe you can use the traditional two-sided material, which can give you the opportunity to use different materials from the front surface and the back surface. But in the most cases, you just need to click right here and choose the translucency. So basically here you can use another options, and you can have diffuse coat, reflective coat, and you can make different coats, which can be really nice. And with these things right here, you can again create imperfectionalities, but you can just try these options right here. I think that yes.
Perfect. Thank you. I hope that answered the question. Nicely explained. Thank you, Ivan. We're going to take just one more question, and I'll switch to Dan for this one. Yeah, because we've got an hour and a half, and I want to make sure we get to do our giveaway. So I'm going to switch to Dan's screen, and we've got a question here. I don't know how long this will take you, but no pressure, Dan. Ray, hi Ray. He says, do you have any tips for modeling sofas that look realistic? Many of the ones in 3D warehouse look very clunky.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Ray. It's a really, really good one. It's something which, to tell you the truth, we ask ourselves, is it worth us modeling a sofa, or is it worth us finding a good source where we can go ahead and just purchase them, really? So to model them, you would have to use a plugin like Artisan. So what you would do is create a blocked form almost, as you can see here. And I'm sure the guys at CADsoft and maybe yourself, Lauren, could give a bit of information on how much this plugin costs. I know it's not too expensive, but essentially what you could do here is create a really angular version of your sofa, and then using Artisan you can subdivide and smooth it. So in theory, you could, if you had a very particular type of sofa that you wanted to model, you could be using plugins like this. SubD is another one, SUBD. They're all to do with subdividing kind of hard angles, hard normals within your polygons, within your geometry between your polygons. So that would be the advice if you had to create it. The source that we go to when we want to start bringing in, really high fidelity, good quality models is somewhere called Design Connected. And once this loads up, we'll see that we've got a huge range of different types of sofas here. Some of you, I'd imagine, have come across this already. And what's great about this is that SketchUp models are available of, well, all of these. So they are plug and play. You can just drop them straight into your scenes. Some of them are V-Ray ready. If they're not V-Ray ready, then all of them are wrapped. So you see the imperfections that's on this sofa. This is all wrapped around the sofa in a really realistic way. You wouldn't have to re-wrap that. So what you would end up doing is, like Ivan was demonstrating earlier, and I touched on, we'd then start adding reflection, glossiness, reflection, color, and you could just go ahead and start applying any texture you like to this one particular sofa. So they do, I don't work for Design Connected, by the way, but they do have, I think they do have loyalty discount codes if you buy enough of these. You'd have to see whether it's within your budget, but again, that's a choice you have the opportunity of making. You can model it yourself, which may potentially take longer, or use a website like Design Connected.
Perfect. Thank you, Dan. So yeah, just hope that helped, Ray. I think to clear it up, you want to be using something like Artisan. The cost of that is £29 plus VAT. That's in conjunction with CAD Solutions, one of our excellent resellers. And Nick's written in the chat that Sub D might be a better choice though. That's written by one of the SketchUp team. Feel free to drop me an email after the event if you want any more info on that. We are coming to the end. And once again, I just really would like to thank Ivan and Dan for taking time out. And I'll put my screen on now. And I'd also like to thank you guys for attending and asking really excellent questions. So thank you very much. Really quick reminder, this session has been recorded. It's going to go up on Elmtec YouTube. I just want to also remind you that we do have a special discount arranged with one of our resellers, CAD Solution, for everyone who's attended this event. With this discount code, there's a discount on SketchUp subscriptions, V-Ray licenses for SketchUp, and also LobWork, Scatter, and Transmuter plugins. So please do look out for that email, which is going to come tomorrow. Also, with that, if you do decide to purchase with that discount for V-Ray and SketchUp, I know that CAD Solutions will offer a free one-on-one personalized onboarding session. So it's a great deal. So yeah, emails going out tomorrow, guys, with links to this recording and offers and all good stuff. So let's get to the giveaway. That's what we're all waiting for. It's very exciting. So yeah, basically this is to win a free V-Ray license, and also you're going to win a seat at the Archilime Academy. So you'll get to sort of have that training with Dan again, all online, I should say, due to COVID. So I'm going to run the email addresses through the online system. And I feel like I should have prepared a drum roll effect. I did not. So we're just going to sit here in awkward silence while it picks out a name. Okay. Thanks, Katerina. You're very welcome. Okay, got a winner. So the winner of the V-Ray license and the free seat at Archilime Academy is Jonathan Clayton. Congratulations, Jonathan. That's not bad for a Thursday afternoon. I hope that you're going to find that really useful. I'll be in touch after the session to get all your details, and we'll sort that out for you. Yeah, and I hope that you guys have enjoyed this. I hope that it's been useful. Please stay tuned to SketchUp UK social media channels because we're running more and more of these events. Yeah, and we'd love to. Jonathan, great. Glad you're happy. Cool. Okay, and yeah, we'll probably be doing another one at the end of the year. And yeah, let us know what other topics you'd like to know about, to see. We're all ears. Love doing these events. And yeah, thank you for attending, and thank you to Ivan from Chaos Group, and thank you to Dan from Archilime. Have a lovely evening.